Hello and welcome everyone to We'll Be Right Back, the future of hospitality. On We'll Be Right Back, we interview people from every corner of the service and hospitality industry, as well as representatives from organizations providing relief and resources as we learn how to manage and settle into this new reality after COVID-19. I am your host, Greg Tilt. Today I am joined by Michael Gulotta, chef partner of Maypop and Mopho. Mopho is a wonderful Vietnamese restaurant. It's kind of a good neighborhood spot in mid-city here in New Orleans. Maypop is a just fantastic culinary experience in the CBD. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. Can you please introduce yourself a little more and tell us about your restaurants?
So my name is Michael Gulotta. I am from New Orleans, Louisiana. I have 2 restaurants and a small pop-up. Mopho was our first restaurant. It opened in 2014. The original idea was to make a neighborhood restaurant that was sort of an evolution of New Orleans cuisine. Having grown up here, I had a lot of Vietnamese friends, still have a lot of Vietnamese friends, and spent a lot of time going to their homes and having them cook or having their family members cook, and it was just this amazing mixing of New Orleans and Vietnamese cuisine, which I really found inspirational. And so when my business partners and I decided to open a more casual restaurant, we decided that was the direction we were going to go, because it was in an old bookstore in a strip mall in mid-city, honestly in an area that was very much underserved at the time. Now there's a lot of restaurants in mid-city, but at that time there was very few. And that was kind of this amazing eye-opening experience, because I didn't even know Vietnamese cuisine that well, only from eating with my friends. And so it was building it and building a pantry and building this cuisine was I'd like to think that if I had it to do over again, I should have gone to Vietnam, and sort of done some research first. But I think the cuisine probably would have been almost a little too traditional if I would have done that. So it ended up being much more of a mix of New Orleans and Vietnam, more New Orleans than Vietnam or Vietnamese cuisine. And then Maypop was sort of an evolution of that, doing more of the training because I trained in Northern Europe, Italy and Germany, and traveled through France and ate everywhere and worked for some really great fine dining restaurants. And so Maypop was more of that training, and then mixing it with, I actually went and traveled a little bit of the Mekong Delta and mixing what I learned there with all of my classical training. And so Maypop is, house-made pastas, house-made charcuterie, curries, hand-ground in mortar and pestle, and really just focusing on techniques, but then taking that sort of fusion aspect of Mopho and translating it into the really intense prep work and table service and making it more of a fine dining experience. And then we have our little pop-up, which is Rum and the Lash, which, to be quite honest, seems funny now. It's a little pub grub pop-up in a local dive bar, but it originally got Mopho through the opening years, when Mopho had this huge sort of, I don't know how, we ended up on a lot of most anticipated restaurant lists. It was supposed to be just sort of a small restaurant that was going to make money, and then so we could open a higher end restaurant, but somehow Mopho ended up on all these lists. And, so we had like lines at the door when we first opened, and then when people first came in, they kind of got confused about what we were. And I think we were a little confused about what we were in the beginning. And the little pop-up really kind of saved us. It allowed us to generate a good bit of pure revenue just because it's hamburgers and french fries, and really helped us through those first couple of hard summers with Mopho. And so now we just keep it around because it was sort of integral in keeping our company afloat in the beginning.
Absolutely. And I failed to mention your pop-up at the beginning, and I've absolutely frequented it before. You've just got such a great presence around the city and kind of this wonderful style and great food experience that many of us definitely enjoy. So with that in mind, you have a pop-up, you have 2 restaurants, you're absolutely just becoming a presence around the city. Can you kind of walk us through those early weeks with COVID-19, right? That late February, early March period as we worked our way into shelter in place. We always like to ask our guests about that. So how did you respond to it? What were you seeing? What were the discussions you were having, and how did you adjust with your restaurants?
Well, I'm lucky in that one of my business partners is he's the kind of guy that just meticulously reads the news every day. Because a lot of us were just thinking this was more like swine flu and H1N1, where it was big other places, but really wasn't going to impact the U.S. We rolled right into Mardi Gras, which we found later on was not the smartest thing to do, and we weren't really paying attention to it. And then right after Mardi Gras, there was that moment when Italy was really having problems, and Spain was starting to pick up on it, and so was France. And we kind of heard the rumblings of shutdowns, and we sat down with both teams the Thursday before all the major shutdowns. And we were like, look, we feel like this is going to be huge. We feel like they're going to limit tourism and they're going to limit conventions. And so until we figure out what's really going on, let's just stop all ordering going into this weekend. And these are two restaurants that, on any given day, Maypop's doing 300 people on any given day. That's all day. And Mopho on any given day, especially during the busy season, which is where we were when this happened, Mopho could do between 400 and 500 people. And so we told everyone, no ordering. Don't order any food. Let's just run everything out. We can dwindle the menu as we need to, and let's just run our inventories out. And sure enough, I mean, the previous Friday, I think Maypop did 230 people for dinner service. And this following Friday, right before all the shutdowns, I think we did like 130. And we're like, okay, well, that's not awful. And then it was like 90 on Saturday. And then by Sunday, it was like 40 people. And then Monday we rolled in and we're like, all right, we're shutting them down. And so our teams closed everything down. We gave all of the perishables to our staff. We had to make go boxes for themselves and try to get everyone some food because we didn't know what was going to happen. And then those next 4 days were just us trying to figure out what was the best process. To be honest, 1 year prior, Mopho and Maypop were kind of on life support. We just struggled getting Maypop to catch on because it's such an eclectic idea in a city that's known for a very particular kind of cuisine. We really struggled with Maypop because it had no real defining characteristics. All my friends would come in and be like, well, what is this really? And it's like, well, I don't know. We're kind of making it up as we go along. And so it was kind of hard to get, and we finally had Maypop catching on. It was making a lot of big lists. It was Condé Nast and a bunch of other ones, and it was in Southern Living's restaurants that make New Orleans one of the greatest food cities in the world. Like, all that came out right before the shutdown. So Maypop was really starting to hit full speed. So we actually had some money in our bank at both restaurants. We finally had them both kind of singing, but we knew it was only enough to make one payroll. So we shut it down. We pulled our management team onto a Zoom call, and we said, hey, this is obviously a really terrible decision to make, but in order to make sure that we can pay you guys and girls, we have to let everyone go right now. We're going to let everyone go right now. We have enough money to pay everyone up until their last day worked. That's salaried and hourly employees. But now you all have to go and get on unemployment right away because we can't. There's no way. We won't be here to have jobs again for y'all if we don't do this now. And we explained it all to them. We laid it all out. We listened to their concerns, and that was it. There really wasn't. We didn't really have an option. There's no way we could have tried to go down to some kind of delivery and try to keep most of our staff on. It's just too much labor. Labor is just such a large part of our P&L. There's just no way we could have made it. So we figured cutting it off clean was the only way. And then we figure out how to reopen and slowly bring people back that we know want to work. Because one of our other big things is that a lot of staff were just calling saying, we don't feel comfortable coming to work. That was that weekend before. I mean, that's when they started finding COVID outbreaks in all of the office buildings around Maypop. We found, they started realizing that Mardi Gras was like a super spreader event. And, our staff were just calling us being like, I don't feel comfortable coming to work. And so that was another reason why we felt pretty secure in being able to just shut it all down. And then that was when things it was like just getting flipped on your head. I mean, literally spent the last 6 years pushing this restaurant group and then being sort of self-isolated, told to just shut it all down and go home and sit and wait was a very terrifying and still terrifying. Like now learning how to get back into it feels even stranger because I'm here, I'm in my restaurant, I've got some of my key team members that were really excited to come back and we're here, but it's just different. It's not the same. We're jumping through hoops. We're trying to keep people interested and it's extra frustrating because you already built two viable restaurants that were doing a really great job. And now you have to sort of reinvent them, but keep them interesting again. It's a little soul crushing.
Yeah, I imagine you talked a lot on our call about how it's been very fatiguing and my heart goes out to you on that because, as we all know, it's no secret how difficult it is to make restaurants survive. I forgot the exact statistics of it, but, the failure rates are so high, and to make it so viable and then have this external force come in through no mistake of y'all's own, nothing you could have really prepared for. I imagine that was incredibly demoralizing. And I guess kind of in that vein, in the last 6 to 8 weeks, what has really been kind of your focus? I mean, you've got this pop-up, you've got these two restaurants. Where has your energy been kind of pushing on where to reopen and how? Are you doing some sort of hybrid of them? Are you opening some and not others?
So we opened the pop-up first because it's burgers and fries, so that was easy. We opened that a week ago, and then 4 days later, we opened Mopho because before we shut down, Mopho was already doing a strong to go, and we didn't want to do any kind of 25% occupancy. Doesn't really do a whole lot for us. We have an outside seating area, but New Orleans in the summer, I mean, outside seating is a gamble at best. And so if you look at just our indoor seating with staff, we could really only seat maybe 12 people. I mean, that doesn't do anything for us. So for now, we're sticking with just to go until they give us 50% occupancy. And then we opened up with a really simplistic menu because once again, we've polled all of our staff to see who felt comfortable coming back to work. We did receive a PPP loan, which has been a whole nother shit show, to be honest, as far as how the rules keep changing. And we were actually not almost, we were put in a position where we basically had to rat out our own employees if they didn't feel comfortable coming to work or accepting the PPP money. We have to tell the government that they refused it and they're going to kick them off unemployment, which is a shameful thing, I find. When we really couldn't bring them all back anyway, there's no way to bring them all back. We're just not doing enough business. We can't, even at 25% occupancy, we wouldn't be able to bring all of them back. So it's really tying our hands and making us the bad guys.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because you took this PPP grant, the way unemployment works is that a core question is, were you offered a chance to work? And if so, did you take it? Because if the answer is no, well, then you can't collect unemployment. So it sounds to me that y'all are running into this conflict where you need this grant to bring them back on, and do you have to use it in a certain amount of time? Is that why it's kind of forcing your hand? Why is this conflict coming up as far as you can tell?
So our option is if we want to use the money, we have to tell the government that we sent out because we could just give it back. I mean, we could just take it and give it right back. But then it defeats the purpose of taking it. We needed it as opening money to get going again because there were still some outstanding debts that we hadn't paid for purveyors and such, and they weren't going to allow us to put orders in until we settled those debts. So how are we going to get going again? So we had to accept the PPP to get ourselves open again, to get food back in the restaurants, because we used all of our money to pay our staff. So we needed the PPP loan to pay off our outstanding debts to purveyors so we could get food in to reopen again. But to get any of it forgiven, or if you want to use it to pay your staff, then you have to poll the staff. And the thing is, they can just stay home and collect it if they want. Like if they agree to take the PPP money, they can just sit home and collect it, but sometimes it's less than unemployment. And a lot of them don't want to do less than unemployment. And on top of that, a lot of them know that once PPP runs out, they're going back on unemployment anyway. That's where this thing doesn't work out for restaurants. Like I understand if you had a boutique and you only had 3 employees, well, okay. But for a restaurant that's I don't know when we're ever going to be back up at our pre-COVID numbers. Like those staff that we bring back on, we're going to put them right back on unemployment once it runs out of money. We only have 8 weeks to spend it, and 8 weeks is not a lot of time. Once that 8 weeks is up, there's no way we'll be back at 100% capacity. It's physically impossible. The laws are going to say that we're not going to be able to be 100% in 4 weeks. So what are these people supposed to do? And so they weren't thinking of the restaurant industry when they put these rules in place. And so then we were put in the awful position of basically having to report our own staff when we can't even bring them back 100% in 4 weeks anyway. Because we're already 4 weeks in. I think there's only 4 weeks left of the PPP period.
Right, yeah, because my understanding was that there is a limited window to use it. You kind of can't sit on it and wait until, say, the fall, right, when we have more information. And do you find other restaurants and restaurant owners are encountering the same problems?
Oh yeah, they're all pissed. Most of them gave it back just in anger, but I mean, if we wanted to get anything going, we had to use it.
Yeah, kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Exactly.
So what has been kind of some of your solutions to address this problem? Have you been able to have a conversation with your managers and staffs? Have you all been able to come up with anything that kind of maybe threads the needle? Or is this just an ongoing problem that you're waiting to see if there's any action on?
A little bit of both. So we explained to everyone what the situation is. We told them that we had to report to the government if they turned down the PPP money. I don't know. And even the people that accept the PPP, we sent out another mass poll asking them, you've accepted the PPP, but do you even want to come back to work, or do you just want to sit home and collect your PPP money? Because technically they have to clock in. We have to show they clocked in at some point to receive the money. I mean, it really is, the whole thing is not well thought out and is a little idiotic in order for us to give it away. That's why, we're only trying to spend as little of it as we need to. And whenever the time's up, whatever we have left, we're probably just going to give right back and get as much of it as we can forgiven.
Absolutely. If you don't mind me shifting gears here, you mentioned earlier, your purveyors, getting that back up and running again, right? That at the end, you use your money to pay your employees to try to take care of them. You gave away the perishables and food, and you, in your phone call, you mentioned even as things were getting towards that shelter in place, you were rolling back your inventory, you were stopping your orders. So, have there been any challenges with sourcing lately, not just in food, but in getting the materials you need to run a safe operation to conform to phase one standards? Are you able to get masks? Are you able to get hand sanitizer? Can you get the food you need from your purveyors? Have there been shortages or stocking issues?
Well, we work with a local packer, and they had the foresight to just freeze a bunch of product. So they let us know, like, hey, we're freezing all of our inventory to make sure that we can at least have product for as far as meat goes, anyway. And right there, they're like, we feel like this is our only option, and so they made it completely clear what they were doing. They froze all their product. We got a whole bunch of sanitizer from a local brewery. Our linen company really came online. They've got masks and PPE and all that stuff. So that was really good. So by the time we reopened, a lot of purveyors were already online. The hard part was, like, with our meat purveyor, like, we had to settle up. They had our account locked. We couldn't buy anything until we settled up our debt, and they're on COD, which is not easy for a restaurant. COD for restaurants that's not fun.
And for those who don't know what COD means, could you explain that?
Based cash on delivery. So when they show up, like, we have to give them a check right away, which is hard because in restaurants you don't get paid right away. Especially when now with credit cards, like, we don't get our payments till 2 days later. And then now, like, we're using a delivery app to try to get our revenue up. In the delivery app, we get paid once a week. And right now that delivery app's running at almost 30% of our revenue. So COD is hard for us.
Understandable. In that vein, are you finding that this online side of things with your, it's curbside delivery, curbside pickup, correct?
We are curbside pickup, but we also just signed up with a delivery app, one that was able to just pass on. We didn't want to get any of those ones that were percentage-based. Like, we tried doing Uber Eats when it first came out, and it was a scam. So we shut it down immediately. And so now we're working through our POS system actually has a deal worked out with DoorDash, I believe it is. Yeah, I think it's DoorDash. Don't quote me on that. But it's through their delivery app. And so what happens is they allow us just to put on a straight delivery fee. So we're not taking a hit. So basically, if someone wants to get delivery from us, there's an automatic $7 delivery fee. Unless you order over $75, then we waive the fee, kind of thing, and we'll take the hit on that. But that works out in the wash. So
yeah, that makes sense.
But already, I mean, we literally started delivery yesterday, and I think 25% of yesterday's sales were delivery.
So I know we're kind of moving around a lot here. It's just interesting. You've just got so many great points, and you've got me thinking of all these questions. I mean, one thing I'm curious about is you kind of speak about Mopho with a little more certainty, right? Like it's something that's definitely going to continue, and Maypop seems to be, and this is not just you. We had Susan Manick from Zasuan talking about the threats to fine dining, white tablecloth service. There's a lot of anxiety in the industry about that, about whether or not it can even be preserved. Do you plan on having Maypop continue in its current format, or rather its pre-COVID format? Do you plan on focusing on Mopho? What's kind of the trajectory you see for your establishments?
Well, the trajectory is not plotted at this point, and there's really no way to plot it because we don't know. There's so many unknowns. I'm interested to see if there's going to be a huge resurgence of the virus, and even if it does do that, is anyone going to allow another lockdown? I don't think so. But is it going to make people not want to travel? Is it going to make people not want to eat out? There's so many unknowns at this point. And fine dining is a luxury item, and it's a luxury expense. We already had a bubble coming regardless. There was already a huge dining bubble coming. The one thing that was sort of keeping it alive is that more and more people just stopped cooking at home and were happy to eat out multiple times a week. But it kind of made this sort of weird mid-range where people were happy to eat out multiple times a week as long as it wasn't too expensive, but the quality still had to be high. So we were almost getting more squeezed in the middle. Restaurants were getting squeezed out because there were so many options, and we all had to fight to have really, really high quality and really, really reasonable pricing. And so this is going to be an interesting kind of reset because before you had sort of clearly defined restaurant levels. You had fast food, you had fast casual, you have fine dining. But more and more, like even Maypop you call it fine dining, but it's not the fine dining that I came up in working in Michelin-starred restaurants. It was still closer to a fast casual than it was to a fine dining restaurant. Lunch was more fast casual. Dinner tried to be more fine dining, but it was just getting the respect and notoriety to be able to do that. Because for us, we don't have some huge backer. We opened Mopho with some money that we borrowed from one of my business partners' relatives. They weren't like just dumping money into it. They gave us a one-time infusion of money, and we used profit from Mopho to open Maypop. And so unless you have someone really backing a fine dining restaurant, you notice a lot of chefs who train in fine dining open these smaller restaurants that sort of blur the lines because it's the only way to keep revenue coming in. You can't just sit there and be a fine dining restaurant unless you've got some kind of major backing. And so Maypop blurred those lines. It wasn't truly fine dining, and so now I'm not even sure what it's going to be when it comes back. And, my business partners and I keep talking. In fact, I have a call here with them in like 30 minutes about what are we going to do with Maypop, and I honestly don't know. I mean, we can try to open it up in some respects, but really it has to do about 100 people a day at a $40 gas check average if it wants to pay its bills. How am I going to get 100 people through that door right now? It was hard enough getting 100 people through the door in a summer, during a normal summer when we had some tourism. How am I going to do that now, 100 people a day?
Sure, and on the heels of losing the spring, which is generally a huge, that's a huge time for your industry. I mean, the service industry, event spaces, you name it. The March and October are basically where all the wedding money comes in, all the event money comes in, everyone's here for festivals. You're not just going into a tough season, but you lost a good season too.
Yes, that's our typical run is you get fat in the spring and then you ride it. You store that money away, you cut down labor, you cut down menus, and you ride it through the summer, and then you bulk it back up again whenever you hit October. But even October is not the best. It's really November. November is when things really start to hit downtown. So yeah, we've lost that, and that's kind of the decision we have to make. The decision we have to make is, do we try and open up some weird quasi-similar version of Maypop, and it was already a weird quasi-concept to begin with, so then how do you do that and make it viable? It's really, really hard, and then, or do we just negotiate with our landlords and our loan repayment, our bankers, and figure out how to just hibernate it until things come back? I mean, honestly, I don't know. It doesn't help out our landlords to have a whole bunch of empty ground floor businesses, so maybe they'll work with us on that. The thing is, to open the doors costs us money. So if I'm opening the doors and bringing in product and we don't sell it, then I'm just hemorrhaging money. I'd have to try to open it up the next couple of weeks if I wanted to use some of that PPP money on it. Right now, Maypop's staff who agreed to come back are just sitting home collecting PPP money because I have to spend it right now, but there's no point in opening my business, which once again is why this PPP doesn't really work for restaurants. I can't open a restaurant like that in a tourist center if there's no tourism. But I have to spend this PPP money now, which makes no sense.
And on an even more fundamental level, it basically is just trading one form of federal funding for people for another form of federal funding. Whether it's unemployment or the PPP, it's basically the same pot.
Right. Except now the federal government's going to try to work a way to kick my employees off of unemployment and making me the bad guy in the middle.
Right. And then you can't use the PPP after the unemployment expires. I mean, this is clearly a serious problem of overlapping benefits that needed to be separated.
Right. So now Maypop sits there, which sucks because it's, Maypop is up for a Beard Award. It's I'm a finalist for Best Chef South this year, and it's for Maypop. And Maypop, I don't even know if it's going to be open. It's a really, really crazy situation to be in, and it's heartbreaking because that team worked really hard, and to be quite honest, they're demoralized. They don't even really want to come back because they're afraid to face that music. Because if we go down there and we fire it all back up again and we try to serve food and no one shows up, well, what does that mean? Like right now it's all unknown, so you can kind of hope that things will be better. But if you go down there and you open it up and nobody shows up and that PPP money runs out, well, then we shut it right back down again. I have a lot of friends like, man, we want to support you. I'm like, yeah, but I need 200 people a day to support me. 200 people a day is such a high number. It's crazy numbers. Whenever someone comes to you and like, you need to open a restaurant in this neighborhood, it's like, okay, can you guarantee me 300 people a day? And then they're like, no, but I'm going to be there every day. You're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to hold you to that. You better be here every damn day, and you better spend about, $1,000.
what do people need to take away from your experience and what you see happening? I mean, I know that obviously the situation seems very bleak, right? And you're adapting and you're kind of figuring it out as we go. The information changes every day. But, there are other restaurant owners, there are other people who work in the industry, hopefully listening to the show and gleaning something of value from it. What would be something you'd want to tell them, or whether it's advice or whatever you'd want to say?
Well, I don't rightly know at the moment. For us, it's our whole, my business partners and I's whole rule was, because our food is different and because we went out on limbs and created different things, it was always to make sure that the customer leaves happy. And if the customer always leaves happy, and we give good service, and we know we did everything we could to at least let them know that we cared about their experience, then business would grow. And it always did. A year ago, we had a hard time figuring out, we had two busy restaurants that weren't making any money. And so the last year really was us doing all the things we should have been doing way earlier, which was, liquor costing and food costing and labor costing, and really just picking the restaurants apart and making them into profitable businesses. And then, we got through that part too. And so it was almost directly a year before this whole pandemic broke, where we said we were going to get our restaurants finally in working order. And it took us a full year of really working our asses off to get them where they needed to be. And they were putting money in the bank. We were paying down debt. We were making strides. And so now, I don't know, we're faced with this new issue. And right now, the hardest thing for me is I kind of got my inspiration knocked out of me. And so right now I'm trying to figure out how to get it back. That's kind of been my new goal, is like, how do I get myself, because any time before, if you talk to me, I would walk in and work the service myself. I mean, I worked service all night myself last night. Like, I never balk at jumping in and getting the job done. It's just like, this thing really just knocked the wind out of me, and I don't feel like I have it back yet. Like, I feel like I'm here doing the things, and I've been working on new menu items with my chef de cuisine, and then while we've been talking about them, I've been costing them on the computer and making sure they're because now, we made that rule a year ago that nothing goes on the menu now unless it's costed to a T. And so we're trying to do all the old things, but I feel like it's a hard position to be in, where you can do all of that and still be spontaneous and come up with really great dishes. Like, I miss, like, I keep scrolling through, still get my text messages from all my farmers, but I feel like I can't bring that food in yet. And I feel like I should. I feel like I should be supporting them. But right now, I got to make sure that I can keep my restaurant open. So what becomes more important? And so I've kind of hit this crossroads where, Mopho's always kind of existed right in the middle, where we bring in the local things and spotlight them, but we also use a lot of commodity because we have to pay the bills. Whereas Maypop was almost 70% locally sourced, and everything else came from whatever commodity, onions, bulk onions, and things like that, and like some pork for dumplings was commodity, but everything else was local. And like the thing that's killing me now is I don't feel like a chef anymore. I just feel like I'm trying to survive, and I don't like that feeling. Because even when Mopho was struggling, we still made sure that the food was great. But like right now, I have like such a simplistic menu on, and yes, it tastes good, but it's not like, we're all feeling like we're not ourselves. We're all feeling like the restaurant isn't what it once was, and so we're trying to figure out how to get back there. And I feel like I'm rambling, but it's also like the thing that's kind of crushing me right now is I'm not working with my local farmers. I'm afraid to bring in their product because I feel like I can't turn it fast enough and make the profit that we have to make. I used to be very idealistic, but literally a year ago, I was in a very difficult meeting with our bankers, being like, they're like, if you can't get your costs in line, then we're gonna close these restaurants. And we figured out how to do both. We figured out how to buy local and still make money, and now I feel like I got pushed right back to the beginning again, and so I don't know, I'm still reeling a bit, but I still have, the drive's still there. I'm still looking at these text messages that I get from my farmers, trying to show me the things that they have, and I feel like I got to get them back in the door, and I sometimes just have to remember timing. Like, Mofo's literally only been open a week, and so yes, we got to get, and so the big drive now is like, how do I get back there? How do we get back to being a really great restaurant again? Whereas right now I feel like we're on life support.
Well, I think as hard as these conversations are, you're asking good questions. And I honestly, like, in a weird way, I try to keep the show very, I don't want to get too meta, but I mean, I try to keep the show very somewhat optimistic, right? There's some doom and gloom. There's a lot of struggles going on, but we're trying to find our way. The community's working together. But I also think it's important sometimes to look at it and go, it's a really dark night right now. And I think that in some ways it's almost kind of refreshing. You're like, look, the fire right now is a little tampered, but I'm trying to get that inspiration going. As much as this has been difficult for you, you are still looking at those text messages. I'm sure you are still mulling over some of those ingredients. And for what it's worth, I hope that it all is successful for you. I know that I can't even imagine what you're going through, but we're all rooting for you, and we really hope that you succeed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth much. I know it's not worth much, but
no, it has been a really good feeling. Like all the people that say they miss our restaurants, and that keeps us excited, and and honestly, like being a finalist for James Beard, it changes the conversation for our business partners. It's like, God, man, like the restaurant was making it before all this happened, but now it's in such a precarious spot. It's being where it is located and the kind of cuisine it was doing. How do we fight that battle? And so now for us, it really is just how do we stay on life support to make it to the point where the economy comes back again and then we can come back to life.
So on that note, is there anything else you want to discuss? Is there anything we didn't tap into? I know there's been a long conversation. I hope it hasn't been too much, but is there anything else you want to touch on that we didn't really get into?
The only one other thing that I'll say, and I'd like to commend like a bunch of other my chef friends who are parents. I spent the beginning of this whole thing with my kids. I mean, we were shut down and my kids were out of school, and their mother was technically an essential worker because she sold stuff for construction, and like construction was still going on, or like for supply for whatever, like houses and stuff like that. So she was an essential worker technically. She still worked the whole time. So I literally took 2 months off and raised my kids for 2 months, which was huge. And I didn't even work. Like I know like a lot of my friends, like Isaac Toops and Jason Goodenough, like they were still doing meal preparation and feeding people with their kids, like bringing them to the restaurant with them. I don't know how. Of course, I also have twin boys who are like twin wrecking balls. So I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I commend any chef parents who still showed up to work every day while having to juggle their kids and all that. That was a really hard time. And it was a major reason why we waited so long to reopen, is that myself, my business partners, we all have young children. And all of our children's mothers all are essential workers. And so we were babysitting most of the time. So if I was here, I had my kids, sitting at the end of the bar reading or doing whatever. And so that was a whole other level of this. I mean, it was great that I got to spend basically a solid 2 months with my boys, but it was also a huge hurdle to getting back open again. We literally waited until school ended because like my mom's a teacher, and now that school's over, because she was still working from home, now she can watch my kids. And so that was another huge part of it.
Definitely want to echo that. Everyone who's out there juggling, homeschooling, and I myself have a 3-month-old. Not to pat myself on the back here, but I promise from at least somewhat experience here, I have one kid who I don't even have to teach. I just have to make sure he's alive and his diapers are changed, right? Like I can only imagine dealing with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, right? That